Environmentally and economically, things are tough and we're all feeling the squeeze. Woodwork is creating environmentally conscious products and using sustainable practices should be supported. But with operational costs and material costs steadily increasing over the past few years, they need to squeeze as much as they can from any materials they use. Offcut is a platform that supports woodworkers to maximise the use of their materials and for consumers to support sustainable manufacturing practices. Making with wood means making offcuts, and trust us, there are lots of them. Working closely with woodworkers to understand the types of offcuts they produce, we have created a series of products that make the most of the available material. These designs are shared for woodworkers to replicate with their own offcuts and for other makers to create with the offcuts they collect. Additionally, if you don't know what to do with an offcut, we have a built-in system for design generation. Simply plug in the dimensions of your offcuts and it will tell you which of the designs they can be turned into. With Offcut, beautiful products are produced from discarded materials. This supports small business and helps the environment. Offcut, making the most of what we have. So, how did this all start? It began with a desire to better understand the local maker community by visiting furniture makers' workshops. While there, we discovered just how many offcuts they were producing, but also holding on to, storing them away in the workshops until there was just too many of them and they had to go in the wood burner. They hold on to them because there is value in them. They appreciate that these are high quality materials that were once part of a living tree. They've also spent money on them and want to get the most out of them. The challenge is that by their nature, they're hard to work with. They come in different shapes and sizes and have awkward elements like knots and cracks. We were immediately struck by the thought, what if products were made specifically to use offcuts? With the selection of these offcuts in the studio, we set about evaluating their characteristics to understand what becomes an offcut and why. Typically they fit into two categories. Some are created as part of the maker's primary practice. These are often similar materials and sizes and are structurally solid. The other is when undesirable elements like the cracks have been removed. Typically these are considered to be a lesser quality. Understanding this distinction is important for determining the challenges that might be incurred when trying to produce products from these materials. To further develop an understanding of the materials, we sought out expert advice from the makers that supplied the offcuts, as well as Ian Bailey, an architectural researcher that, among other things, specialises in material reuse and redeployment. They highlighted that the issue of offcut use, or non-use, extends to almost all woodwork, and that an important challenge is not just to work out what to make of the offcuts in front of us, but to also support others to know what designs might be suitable for the offcuts in front of them. This speaks to accessibility, which is one of the core elements that we measure a successful project by. Increasing the number of people that can engage with a project can increase its effectiveness. Accessibility was also a driving force for the choice of CNC machining as the primary manufacturing process. This is because it requires digital designs that can be more easily replicated than manufacturing by hand. It also bridges a skill gap and makes otherwise complex techniques like joinery accessible. Much of the prototyping and design development was done using the Shaper Origin. This was primarily because it uses a very responsive workflow. This was reinforced by feedback received from PlusX workshop manager Andrew, who described using the Shaper as intuitive and adaptive. Initial exploration looked at methods of joining offcuts and how the offcuts might be used to create surface details like inlays. Feedback from the makers producing the offcuts highlighted the need to keep the overall process simple and quick, and therefore more cost-effective. This is another important consideration. If the designs are to be replicated by the makers, then they need to not only use offcuts, but they also need to be as profitable as their primary practice. This consideration led to the development of designs that use a streamlined machining process. For example, machining from a single side, using the same thickness material for all parts of a product, limiting tool changes, and reducing finishing processes. The Offcut platform allows for the products and designs to be engaged in multiple ways. Makers that want to use offcuts, whether their own or ones they have collected, can access the design files and the necessary knowledge to produce the products. These products can be purchased by consumers, either through the Offcut marketplace or on a maker's personal website. Similar to models like OpenDesk, the designs are licensed to be used personally free of charge and charged for if used commercially.